Hello, Pastor John here from Pinesburg again. One of the Bible's most known stories, the Bible's full of stories, and there's a difference between a story and a parable. A parable is something that didn't actually happen, but it could. A parable is a different kind of a story. It's a teaching story. In other words, it didn't happen, but here's what we're to learn from it. But one of the most known stories that actually happened in the Bible is that of the little guy with 5 loaves and 2 fishes. Let me quickly review the story, and then I have a question. Jesus was teaching, and I know this is old hat to you, but Jesus is teaching and preaching on a hillside, and it drew a giant crowd. The Bible says everywhere Jesus went, he drew a giant crowd. Some of the crowds weren't healthy, and some of the crowds were good, but he drew a giant crowd wherever he went. The Bible says there were 5,000 men. Now, it definitely says 5,000 men. It doesn't say 5,000 people. And if you count the average, I'm thinking that the average Bible family back in those days were a wife and 2 kids, maybe 3. So he could easily, there could have easily been 10, 15, 20,000 people there with nothing to feed them. I mean, imagine how you'd feel if your neighbor came over and was hungry and you didn't have anything to feed him, how bad you would feel. Imagine what they felt like with all these people on the hillside, nothing to feed them. A little boy gave up his lunch of bread and fish, and they passed it out, and they passed it out. And the Bible says that after they passed out everything, everybody was full. They ate all they could possibly eat. They couldn't eat any more. And everybody had leftovers. That's a miracle of God. It doesn't make sense. You say it doesn't make sense. It can't make sense in our natural minds, but it does in our biblical minds. And I've for years, the question is, I guess, that comes to me different times, what happened to the extra food? What did they do with the extra food that they gathered up? The Bible says they gathered up 12 baskets of food after they had everything left over. That's a couple hundred times more than what they started with. And it doesn't actually say what happens, but I completely believe, based on the story around the story, I completely believe that the leftovers went back to the little guy who gave his lunch in the first place. Sort of as a reward for him giving up all he had. He didn't give up some that he had. He gave up his entire lunch where he didn't have any more lunch. And he then turned into one of the 20,000 that was fed. The key behind it all is to be sensitive to the things of God. So as we go through the day, let's not hope the next person does what we're supposed to do. Let's not hope the church up the street or down the street or up the road or the Ruritan Club or the Lions Club or some other civic organization does what we're supposed to do as a child of God. So take a look around. You'll find folks in need, and they'll be glad to take the blessings of God as you give it to them. So now let's get at the work of being a blessing today. Take a blessing from God, give a blessing of God to someone else. And until we're together again, you make it a great day, and may God bless you.